Good morning. Good morning. Look around. What a great group we have here today. Before I get started, I would love to know who is in the room. How many of you came from off campus today? That's probably about 20% or so, 25%. Welcome. We're glad you made it here. We know parking and everything else, it's a little bit of a mission. So we're appreciative and glad that you are here to join us. How many of you are students, grad students or undergrad students? Okay. Staff. Awesome. And faculty. Awesome. This mirrors what we typically have at our lectures, which is an amazing group of people from all different walks of life. And our goal is to provide value to you and some interesting conversations regardless of where you sit and what your current role is. My name is Nathan Hiller. I'm Executive Director at the Center for Leadership, and we're thrilled to have today's installment of the Leadership Lectures. We started these Leadership Lectures in 2011, and we have now had almost 50 guests, internationally renowned folks from across different walks of life, sharing a bit about some of their expertise and experience and insights with our audience over the years. And we are just so glad that you are here as part of it today. I would like to introduce, without further ado, our guest speaker today, Jen Fisher. And Jen is an internationally best-selling author. She is the CEO of the Wellbeing team and is also the originator and host of the Work Well podcast, all of which have made huge splashes. She has, in her previous life, served as the first Chief Wellbeing Officer of Deloitte and initiated that role, and it garnered a lot of international attention and press because it was the first of its kind. And she's going to share a little bit about some of the origins of some of these, some of how that came to be. And in that role, she pioneered a human-centered approach to work that gained national recognition and reshaped how organizations view well-being. She has dedicated her career to helping leaders build cultures where people thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. And her work challenges outdated systems and champions a vision of work that sustains rather than depletes. And I don't know about you, but we all need a little sustainment rather than depletion these days. At the heart of Jen's work is the conviction that hope is a strategic imperative. You've probably heard it said, hope is not a strategy. We're going to turn that on its head today. She helps leaders harness hope as a catalyst for cultural transformation, guiding them to reimagine work as a force for human flourishing. Ladies and gentlemen, Jen Fisher. Welcome. Welcome. I'm glad you're here with us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today. So I'm going to do a little bit of a reading from my book. I see that many of you have a copy of it. This isn't a direct reading. It's actually a compilation of a bunch of different parts of the book that I put together that will help drive our discussion after the reading today. There I was again, face illuminated by the blue glow of my laptop screen in the darkness of my living room. The house silent. My husband was asleep. I wasn't working because of a deadline or a crisis. I was working because I didn't know how not to. And in that ordinary moment, the truth presented itself. I was addicted to work. For much of my career, I chased the high of inbox zero, like others might chase their next fix. And like any powerful drug, work could become my high and my alibi. It had legitimate social currency with the glossy veneer of hustle culture and dedication. I rationalized everything with language that made it sound noble. I wasn't addicted. I was passionate. I wasn't compulsive. I was committed. I wasn't running from my fears. I was driven. My identity merged with my output. I became what I produced, measured in deliverables and quarterly reviews. The price revealed itself in quiet moments. Missed dinners, vacations where I was only half present, conversations where I nodded along while mentally drafting tomorrow's to-do list. But I couldn't see any of this at the time. I was so deep in the pattern that it felt normal, even admirable. The opposite of hope isn't despair. It's hopelessness. It's believing that nothing that you do will ever be enough. And that addiction wasn't my personal failing. It was a symptom of how we've been taught to think about leadership. We've been told that strong leadership means having all the answers, demanding excellence, never showing vulnerability. That it means driving to new heights of productivity week over week, month over month, year over year. But this thinking actually makes everyone weaker. The metaphorical race to the corner office is a false start. This symbol of achievement doesn't elevate us, it depletes us. And here's what I've come to understand. Hope and hopelessness can coexist, sometimes within the same hour. You can acknowledge that your team is struggling and believe that you can make it better. You can be uncertain about the future and still take the next step. You can be exhausted and still ask, what's one small thing that we can try? This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't denial. This is hope doing its actual work, holding the hard reality while moving toward possibility. We don't need to eliminate every trace of hopelessness to function effectively. We just need to ensure that hope has sufficient space to operate alongside it. I remember sitting in a parking garage one day, keys in the ignition of my car, unable to start it, or my day. I felt completely hopeless. For weeks, I'd been going through the motions mechanically. And that's the thing about hopelessness. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It creeps in, disguised as realism, whispering that your exhaustion is merely clarity. And in that parking garage, unable to turn my key, I couldn't yet see the path forward. But somewhere beneath the hopelessness, a question was forming. What still might be possible, even now? That question remains our most powerful tool against despair. But to understand why, we need to understand what hope really is. Hope isn't wishful thinking. Research from psychologist C.R. Snyder shows that hope is actually a cognitive process with 3 essential components. First, clear goals, not vague aspirations, but specific targets. Second, multiple pathways, seeing different routes to get there when one is blocked. And third, and probably most important, agency, the belief that your actions matter and that you can navigate those pathways. When all 3 are present, people perform better, collaborate more, and deal with uncertainty better. But when any one breaks down, hope collapses. And the words leaders use, that all of us use, matter more than we actually realize. They either build hope or they kill it. I had become fluent in a language of leadership that was hurting my team, words that kill hope. And the moment that I realized this was during a team meeting. A colleague approached me with a creative solution to a problem we'd been having. And without thinking, I responded, "We don't have the bandwidth for anything new right now." What I meant was, I can't imagine how we'd fit this in. But what I'd communicated was, this isn't worth exploring at all. I watched as their enthusiasm visibly deflated. I'd become so practiced at identifying why things wouldn't work that I'd lost the muscle for imagining how they could. And over time, fewer ideas were brought forward. People learned that innovation wouldn't get past my wall of reasonable limitations. The most insidious hope killer? Let's be realistic. It sounds responsible, but it's actually an innovation blocker. So I started experimenting. Instead of making statements that closed off possibility, I began asking questions that invited exploration. That timeline isn't feasible became, what would make that timeline possible? That's not how we do things here became, what interests you about this approach? Let's be realistic became, that's ambitious. How do you think we can achieve it? This isn't just a semantics game. It genuinely shifted my own thinking patterns alongside others. The energy on my team in my team meetings transformed. People stopped offering ideas defensively and started offering them generatively. My team mirrored my patterns. When I started using the language of possibility, they started using it too. Which brings me to another truth that I had to learn the hard way. The most hopeful thing a leader can say isn't, I have all the answers. It's, I don't know what will happen, but I believe in our ability to handle whatever does. I was in a meeting with our CEO, facing a significant organizational challenge. She asked me a direct question. I could have done what I'd always done, cobbled together an answer that sounded confident, even though I wasn't sure. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, I don't have an immediate answer for this. I need to think about it, and I need to consult with others. I'd been conditioned to believe that leaders always have the answer, that uncertainty signals incompetence. I expected disappointment, lost confidence. Instead, she leaned back and smiled. Refreshing, she said. Take all the time you need. I was shocked. The sky didn't fall when I showed my limitations. What's more, the quality of the solution was better because I took time rather than presenting a half-formed answer out of fear. That moment changed everything for me. My vulnerability didn't diminish her confidence in me. It actually invited collaboration. It opened up possibility. So I started a different experiment. I started admitting when I didn't understand something, when I felt uncertain. Not dramatic confessionals, just simple acknowledgments of human reality. And something unexpected happened. My decision quality improved because I could access more information. Team members started sharing concerns they previously kept private. They offered perspectives I hadn't considered. They challenged assumptions I'd overlooked. And here's the insight. Vulnerability is not about feelings. It's about information flow. When people can share what they really think, what they're genuinely concerned about, what they truly need, the team operates with better data and makes better decisions. The energy I'd been using to maintain an invulnerable image became available for actual leadership. My behavior changed, and my team changed in response. People don't follow you because you're invincible. They follow you because you're human. Vulnerability doesn't diminish authority. It transforms it from positional power to authentic influence. Hope is learned. Children learn hope from their parents. And in the workplace, we learn it from our leaders. Research shows that children develop the habit of hope through relationships that are characterized by boundaries, consistency, and support. And in organizations, people replicate what they see their leaders doing. Just like parents influence their children's capacity for hope, leaders influence their team's ability to see possibilities or to give up before they even start. When a parent says, this is hard and we'll figure it out together, a child learns that difficulty doesn't mean impossibility. When a leader says, I don't have all the answers and we're going to work through this, a team learns that uncertainty doesn't mean helplessness. But when a leader consistently responds with, that won't work, or we've tried that before, a team learns resignation. When a leader only focuses on limitations, people stop seeing possibilities. We're always teaching hope or hopelessness. There is no neutral. So the question is, what are you teaching those that follow you? What I didn't anticipate was how these changes in my own approach would ripple outward. I remember a colleague who initially rolled her eyes at my possibility thinking questions. Months later, I heard her using exactly the same questions with her team. When I mentioned it, she laughed and said, I caught the hope virus from you. Hope is contagious in the best possible way. Each person who develops this capacity becomes a carrier of possibility, expanding the collective imagination about what might be achieved. We often think of emotional contagion in negative terms, how anxiety spreads through groups, but hope spreads just as readily when someone consistently demonstrates its practice. Your hope matters, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Every time you choose possibility over resignation, you create space for others to do the same. Each time you take action based on hope rather than fear, you demonstrate what's possible. You've all heard the reference to the opening of Pandora's box. We use it when we're talking about escalating troubles, but the actual story is different than you might think. In Greek mythology, Pandora was given a jar that contained all the evils of the world: disease, war, famine. She was told to never open it. But curiosity got the best of her, and when she opened it, all these terrible things were released into the world, and she slammed the lid shut in a panic. She was able to trap one thing inside: hope. And for centuries, scholars have debated, was hope trapped as a mercy, keeping it safe for humanity, or was hope imprisoned as the final cruelty, forever out of reach? I've come to see this story differently. Perhaps hope wasn't trapped at all. Perhaps it remained because hope works differently than the evils that rushed out. Hope doesn't force itself upon us. It waits to be recognized, to be cultivated, to be chosen. Hope stayed at the bottom of the jar because that's precisely where we find it, at the bottom, when everything else has been released, when we faced our challenges and named our struggles. And in our modern workplaces, in our classrooms, in our communities, hope is still there. It's still waiting. All we have to do is reach in and choose it, one small action at a time. And when we put hope into action, we don't just change our organizations. We change what's possible in the world. Thank you.
So I would like to invite someone to join us here on stage. Adrienne McCoy is the Chief People Officer at Baptist Health South Florida. She's also the chairman of our board of advisors at the Center for Leadership and a friend of Jen. So wearing all of these hats, it's a perfect opportunity to hear from her. And the three of us will engage in a bit of a, why don't you sit here and I can engage in a bit of a fireside chat. But before we get started, I just wanted to, we'll have a time for Q&A a little bit toward the end. But I want to kick it off. Are there a couple questions or thoughts, ideas, just as we, before we go into our discussion here? Just based on what you heard, or reactions, or things that you thought were really striking or interesting. Yeah, we have a yes, yeah.
Okay, I have a PhD, but I can't work a mic. You give me hope. Well, yes, and I really love the Greek mythology and the story, because when you said it, I knew that hope was in there, because I remember that story, but then the way that you tied it back was really fantastic, so great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Questions? Comments? Ideas? Okay, go ahead. And I believe you raised your hand that you're a student, correct? Yes. Can you tell us your name and what you're...
It's like not turning on. Okay, there we go. So my name is Comes Bendis Cool. I work here at FIU with the Education Effect, and I'm currently a junior studying public administration. Something I really liked that you pointed out that I was kind of just like jotting down as I was like listening to you, I was kind of like writing notes. Something that really stuck out to me was how you reframed a culture of yes to a culture of hope. We're us working here doing collaborative leadership and being, working with each other and trying to find new ways, new forms to approach different problems that, arise in society. I think it's really interesting how instead of optimizing for a culture of yes, how do we evolve a culture of yes to something much bigger, to something much more capable of being able to handle the problems that are, currently arising, and how do we inspire others, especially when things get harder, into that culture of hope. So I think that's just something that came to mind, so I think that I really appreciate that, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think sometimes a culture of yes doesn't lead us to where we need to be. It just leads to more.
Okay,
Hi, thank you.
last
So, last one?
Last one for now, and then we can take, go ahead.
Okay, I have several. No, I'm kidding.
Where.
My name is Rosie Losada. I am a professor at the College of Law, and I also started a well-being program for law students there 5 years ago. I love this changing of the narrative of hope as something that many people think of as wimpy, as a power skill. And then I also so appreciate how you're teaching us that the language we use matters, that we can empower people when we can empower ourselves through shifts in language and approaches. So thank you for that. And I live in a world of words, in law, so that will resonate with my students. Thank you.
That's amazing. Yeah, I actually do a lot of work with law firms, and they are very receptive to this. So I think the world of law is changing quite a bit in terms of what, lawyers and their associates need in terms of performance. Yeah.
So we'll have time for questions at the end. I want to jump right in. Adrian, do you want to kick off
feel
our
so far
conversation?
away.
Yeah.
I know.
We were going to do Between Two Ferns. I think that was our discussion, but we didn't pull the palms in time. So.
Well, good morning, everybody. Really nice to be here with you. And every time I hear Jen speak, I just sit there and it's like I hear it brand new. I read the book, but to hear you this morning, that was really, really phenomenal. When you think about your career at Deloitte and how this all happened, how we got here today, before you were the Chief Wellbeing Officer for Deloitte, you had a job there. How did things change for you?
Yeah, so, I started at Deloitte actually in the marketing organization. That was my degree coming out of school. It was supposed to be accounting, actually, because my father was an accountant, but I couldn't make it past intermediate accounting 2, for those of you that know what that means. So I switched to business management and marketing. So I started in marketing and went on to be the chief of staff to one of the CEOs at Deloitte. And in the book and in my reading, I talked about kind of my addiction to work and the feelings of hopelessness and depletion. And it was really during that time in these high performing organizations, sometimes are, for many people, our identity becomes our work becomes our identity, and we lose everything else. And that certainly is my story and my story of depletion and burnout. And so for me, it was coming out of that role and experiencing very significant burnout at a time when we weren't talking about burnout. I mean, this is 12 years ago. And so did burnout exist? Yes. Were we talking about it? No. Did we have tools and resources to potentially deal with it? And even when I went to seek clinical and professional help, I was not diagnosed with burnout. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, which is oftentimes similar in how it shows up, but also connected. So for me, it was the journey of having to get healthy and well personally and figure out what was the role that I wanted work to play in my life. And where did that sit, and how did I make sure that there was still a Jen and not a, Jen, whatever my title was at Deloitte. And that's, in this world, that's really hard to do. I mean, when we introduce ourselves by what we do. We don't introduce ourselves as who we are or what we enjoy doing. We introduce ourselves as our title or where we work. And that's important, and it should be important. Like if you choose to have a career alongside a meaningful life, that's really important, but it shouldn't be everything. So that's really what led me down the path of becoming the first Chief Wellbeing Officer. And it really wasn't my vision, to be honest with you. When you talk about visionary leaders and leaders that invest in others, I went to my leader after I'd come back from taking time off, a leave of absence for my burnout, and I was going to resign from the organization because I had decided I wanted to help people not get to where I got, but those roles didn't exist inside of large organizations at the time, certainly not at a place like Deloitte. And she was the one that said, you're not going anywhere. And it was kind of a funny conversation because I was like, wait, I just came in to quit and you're telling me I can't quit. Like, no, that's not okay. And she goes, no, she said, because if you need this, there's a lot of other people that need it too. And that's the kind of leader that she is. She's still a great friend and mentor today, but she was the one that created the runway. She was like, go back to where you came from. You're not leaving. Put together your business case. And I think that's a testament to many of these large organizations. Certainly at Deloitte, we think of them oftentimes as this machine, and they certainly are that. But there's also room for entrepreneurship and, in small ways within small groups of people changing how you do things. And so I often describe the role as a Chief Wellbeing Officer, and probably so many of our roles, I wonder if you describe your role this way too, Adrian, is less of a role of power and much more of a role of influence. Like the best skill in that job is making other people believe that your idea was their idea, so then you can go do it.
Consultants are really good at that too, right? Like that. Is there any, like if I'm thinking of this from someone who is kind of earlier on in their career, and you need to produce results.
Yeah.
You need to get stuff done. How do you balance this without coming across like someone who is going to say, I really care? In an interview, you start asking like, what does your work-life balance look like? Which is a red flag to any hiring manager because this person's going to be like, that's code for I'm going to do the bare minimum. So I don't think these things are at odds, but how would you reconcile this idea of like, you need to produce if you want to get ahead at some point?
Well, I think I would actually push back on that, Nathan. I think we're getting to a point where it's more common to ask. You don't have to ask what's the work-life balance here, but what do you do for, what's the culture like? What are, the well-being programs and tools that you offer? So I think there's other, ways, but look, I'm a little bit bold, and I like to push back on systems. If you haven't noticed, the name of my book is is Hope is the Strategy, not Hope is not a Strategy. And so I do think that we should make it commonplace to ask that question. I think that matters, and I think good hiring managers, for anybody that aspires to be in that role, would say, oh, wait, this is a person that has boundaries, and boundaries are important because if you don't have boundaries, it's going to lead to burnout and depletion. So, but I get what you're saying. That's not necessarily the world that we all live in. But I would ask things about the culture. How do people, if I'm on a team, what does support look like from my team members? What does it look like, when I do take vacation, or, just ask more kind of nuanced questions. And look, I think, when you're early in your career, there's something about intention, right? Like there's nothing wrong with working hard. We actually, like, hard work isn't the problem. When people are given difficult, challenging, meaningful work to do, they rise to the occasion, they dive in. Like, that's what we thrive on as human beings. And so it's not the hard work that's the problem. It's the cognitive load of like all the other stuff that's happening in the world, or the endless dings and pings, or the, like all the extraneous load that like doesn't need to be there. But the hard work is what people thrive on. And so I don't think that it's really, I think when we say, especially with younger generations, I hear it and it drives me crazy. Oh, and they've said this with every younger generation. They don't like to work hard. Every one of us heard it. Yep. Every single one of us. And it drives me crazy when I hear that because it's not true. And I think what people are pushing back now against is not that they don't want to do hard, meaningful work. They actually want to do hard and meaningful work. They don't want to do all the other crap that none of us wants to do. There's going to be some of that in every job, right? But can you maximize what is hard and meaningful? That's when people rise to the occasion. So to me, I would be asking about the type of work that I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that what you said just gets at the heart of what it isn't, which isn't, I don't want to work. It isn't, we don't want to make hard decisions. It's not, it's this essence of how you do it, how you create boundaries, how you allow people, how you train people to treat you, and how you maybe train yourself about how you will treat yourself.
Yeah.
Like as you were talking, I just kept thinking, I'm like, that there's some inner work involved in this, in allowing yourself to put on your oxygen mask, right? That a lot of us we haven't done that.
And I know it was provocative to start my book talking about work as an addiction, but I don't think that I'm the only one. I think that, that there are many people that that believe that the reason they are valuable in this world is because of the work that they do. And those people right now tend to be in more senior leadership positions and are kind of creating that culture of sending emails at midnight or on the weekend. And we can debate whether, I've had the debate of like, well, that's when I can work. And so, okay, I get that, but what kind of culture are you creating on your team to make sure that that might be when you can work, but you don't expect that of your team, right? And when does our behavior become reflective of like, well, if you want to be in a position like mine, this is what you're going to have to do. And how do we start to change that? The great thing about hope is what's the next step? What can I do that is small, that's going to cultivate a different way of being for my team and with my team and for myself, quite frankly.
I think it's also about how you have seen individuals before you work and your perception of that.
Yeah.
Because, and you talked about language a little bit earlier, and it was really compelling how you could take the same statement and turn it around. But sometimes we don't make work look fun, look purposeful. We complain a lot about,
we look
does
stressed
anybody
out all
in here
the time.
complain about work? Looking stressed out, and to your point, your team looks at that. If you've got kids, your kids are looking at that. And I've heard people say, I'm not going to work like that person. I'm not going to be that person that is on vacation and is in the corner on a call. So how do we reframe what it means to not necessarily have this hustle culture where you're always on, but you do want to have purpose, you do want to get things done. It's why we all come, not just for cash, right? We come because we want to be known for something. Yeah. We want to contribute something. But how do you do that and balance caring for yourself as well? Because you talked about burnout, which was not beneficial to your organization or to you.
Yeah.
And I think it was even your leader that said, you're not okay,
Yeah.
So how do you balance getting a lot done, achieving while taking care of yourself along the way?
Well, I think that it's not a balance, because there's never a balance, perhaps unless you're in the legal industry and there's some scales of justice somewhere. But I think the intentionality around, there are going to be times in your life when you give more to work because there's something going on, or you are, working towards something. Maybe it's a promotion, maybe it's, something that you're building, maybe it's a big project deadline. And I think knowing that and doing that with intention is important. I think many ways what led to my burnout was, first of all, just the feelings of nothing that I ever did was enough, right? And so knowing, first of all, that what you're doing is enough, and believing that and believing in yourself and having that agency. But also, when I was at Deloitte, for any of you that are familiar with, the accounting and consulting industry, when you're in client service, if you are not, assigned to a project and you are not utilized, you are on the bench. And being on the bench is a bad thing. That is a fear-based thing, because if you are on the bench for too long, then you're at risk of getting let go. And so I tried. I wouldn't say I was successful, but I was like, hey, when people come off really hard projects or really difficult periods, whether it was a big implementation or tax season or audit season or any of those things, why don't we, instead of putting them on the bench, let's put them on the beach. Like, let's give them a week or two to like catch up on their life, catch up on their learning and development, catch up on the things that they need to catch up on. And so I think all of us need to kind of think about our day, our week, our schedules in that way. Like, what are our fallow periods where we are taking care of ourselves, where we are taking a moment of recovery? I mean, Nathan, you're gonna laugh because we were talking about audit before, but auditing your day, right? Like auditing how you spend your time, like really auditing how you spend your time during the week. I do this every once in a while, and we fall into, like, we become aware of it, and then we fall into really bad habits. I mean, all of us spend way too much time doom scrolling on our phones, right? If you spent, that 10 minutes outside getting some sunshine, I mean, it sounds trivial, but it's not. But we spend a lot of time wasted. And so we have to kind of get intentional about those things. Now, we can have a big debate around whether you answer email and take calls on vacations. I'm guilty as the next person on it, but what I will say is, and this isn't, there's no perfect system. There's no perfect way to do anything. But I do think if you are leading people and you're answering emails and taking calls on vacation, you're sending a message to people that if you want to be in a role like mine, you have to do the same. The other message that you're sending, which I think is more damaging, is I don't trust you to handle what happens when I'm gone. And one of the best ways to cultivate hope in your workforce is to say, hey, I'm leaving and I completely trust you to none of us can be the single person in any organization that knows how to solve a problem. And if we are, that's a huge organizational risk that needs to be dealt with, right? And so we just need to start changing our behavior.
We were running a program last week, and we had a group of IT leaders, and one IT leader said, I'm struggling because I am the single point of failure. If a system goes down, I am the only person in the organization who has the ability to get it back up and running. And I got hit by a car a few months ago and was dealing with this while I was getting hit by a car. And you just sort of saying, but also recognizing now this is on them to push and advocate to ensure that this, because you can't presume that people around you recognize this, because so it was the coaching he received was, well, you need to help solve this. You can't presume that the organization does, which I think is kind of a hopeful it's a strategy that gives the individual agency and puts it's not all on the individual to solve, but kind of goes along with this idea of hope.
And I think also, you should never be the only one with all the answers.
Yeah.
Never, you know, and that's hard because for a lot of us, that's not what we were taught about leadership, right? We were taught to have all the information and perhaps share it when it was needed, right? Not share it as a developmental tool. And so, I mean, I know you asked about younger people, but look, the younger people of today, I have a ton of respect. They ask for what they want. They ask questions when they don't know my generation, I feel like, was put your head down, don't say a word. and maybe you'll kind of move through the system, right? And so, but that can't be the way anymore, right? Information is too prevalent. We're working in a world that is, if you're not working collectively together in an office, you're so, separated that in order to learn and to do well in your role, you have to be able to source information and ask the right questions and ask for what you need. And so I do think that we have to push the system a little bit, because if not, the system will just continue being what the system is. And so it takes a little bit of courage, but I see it and I'm like, right on.
Jen, you have a number of tools in the book that people are able to use to become hope dealers, as you call them. Can you share one of those tools with the group?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a lot about that in the reading that I did. I mean, I think that, first of all, becoming really aware of the language that you use. And so one of the tools in the book that I talk about is kind of like this, 48-hour hope study, right? Which is just for 48 hours, Doesn't matter who you're talking to, but every time you talk, pay attention. Like, pay attention to what you're saying. How often do you, I mean, by show of hands, how often do you pay attention to what you're saying? Or does it like just come out of your mouth, right? Like, we stopped somewhere along the way, we kind of stopped thinking about what we say, and we just say it. And I think, like, you pay attention to what you're saying, and you're kind of like, oh, wow, did I actually just say that? So pay attention to what you're saying, and, like, are you communicating with the people that you work with, the people that are your classmates, the people in your community, the people that you love? Are you communicating in a way that inspires and cultivates hope? Or are you communicating, and look, in the world we're living in, I'm just going to say it, it's really easy to go negative. It is really easy to go negative. And so I think we have to constantly be aware of when we do that. And it's not, I think the thing about hope that people don't understand is hope requires you to acknowledge reality, right? You talked about kind of hope as like wishful thinking. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is like, wow, this really sucks. Where can I go from here? Like, what's my next step? And so I think it's always asking yourself that question. What is still possible? What's possible for where I am from where we are? There's tons of tools in the book. There's the Hope Audit, which is what Nathan and I were talking, which is actually, look, I came from accounting and consulting. Of course, I'm going to give you an audit. But it's a way to audit kind of where you are. Like, what is your own? Where are you when it comes to being a high hope individual or medium or low hope? And then it gives you the tools to take steps to increase hope in your life, which will increase the hope in others' lives too.
Do we want to, I'm just looking at the time, do we want to go to some questions? And I'm wondering, as we go to some questions, can you tell us a little bit about your story? Because you are a Miami girl.
I
right?
am a
So
Miami.
tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
What do you want to know about my story?
Whatever you'd like to share, maybe just where you grew up, where you, I mean,
Yeah,
some of these pieces.
I am a Miami girl. Well, I was actually born in Birmingham, Alabama, but I've lived in Miami since I was 8 years old. I went to Miami Palmetto. I went to Pinecrest, Miami Palmetto Junior and Senior High School. I went to University of Miami.
There's great cities have room for great public and private institutions.
Absolutely, yeah, and I've never left. I have two older sisters. Both of them went away to college and ended up coming back. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be the smart one, and I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay here. And yeah, I mean, I've spent my entire career here out of college. I went to work at a smaller accounting and consulting firm for a couple of years before I made the transition to Deloitte, and I was there for 23 years. I am also a cancer survivor, and I was treated by the best of the best at Baptist Miami Cancer Institute, so thank you for that. Yeah, so, and I live in Miami. I'm married, no kids, but we do have a little four-legged that thinks she's a human kid. And I think that's it, yeah.
Good morning. I'm loving the conversation. Hope is absolutely, I am living in it, and I do think that it's a really good strategy. I am recovering from burnout 10 years ago. I'm going to be publishing a book soon, so I'm here just like receiving this beautiful lecture. And I'm curious, my strategy is kindness, right? And elevating a standard of kindness toward yourself and those that you work with. And I wonder, or I'm curious what your thoughts are, because the biggest obstacle that I have found in the past 2 decades of spreading this message about kindness as a superpower to elevate your well-being and every area of your life, the biggest pushback has been that it's not a strategy.
It's soft.
It's soft. Like, what are you talking to me about kindness? Like, yeah, that's cute. But how does that actually produce outcomes? So I'm very inspired by your book. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how kindness towards yourself kind of plays a role in the workplace as an actual strategy to produce real outcomes.
Yeah. This is such a great topic. So I think that kindness is another word and concept that we don't understand. So we think that kindness means being nice all the time. And that's not what kindness is. I think actually being kind is, you'll read my book and you'll be like, well, this is just good leadership. This is being kind. This is telling the truth. I have a whole section on truth telling and why that matters. And, truth telling is a cornerstone of kindness, but we think that being kind is, always being nice to someone. So if you're having a developmental conversation with them, don't tell them something that might upset them. That's actually being unkind. You want to tell somebody something that's going to help them, even if in the moment, how you deliver it, you don't want to deliver it being a jerk. But, some of the best leaders that I've had, the woman that I talked about, and Adrienne referenced it, I didn't mention it here, but if you read the book, she sat me down and she was like, you're not okay. You are struggling, and what is worse is you've convinced everybody that this is what okay looks like. And so giving people the hard feedback is in the workplace is kindness, because that's how we grow. And so for me, Nathan and I were talking about this earlier, when I've had leaders that are like, Jen, really, you want me to start talking about hope in the workplace? And I'm like, I don't care what you talk about, but I want you to tell me, do you want to lead a hopeful organization or do you want to lead a hopeless organization? Because the choice is yours in how you use your words and your behaviors and what you tolerate. And for me, I think that kindness is the same thing. And to me, kindness is a way to cultivate hope.
Hi, everyone. I first want to say, I thought everything you've been saying has been, really inspirational. I really liked especially the part where you talked about how your former leader, sort of transformed, that hopelessness you were feeling into, something more, productive and meaningful for you. I wanted to ask, what do you think makes hopelessness in particular, addicting? What brings us back into, that cycle of hopelessness, despite it being, something that only in a way, drains us?
I think it's a great question. I think part of it is it's in many ways just how we're wired. Our primitive brain is still always kind of looking and viewing everything as a threat. And I think in the world that we're living in right now, we are all constantly on. We're all looking for the next threat. We're constantly hyped up. Our nervous system is, I don't know if you're anything like me, but my nervous system feels like it's on overdrive all the time now. And so I think when you're depleted, and when you are burnt out or exhausted, or you don't feel like you're valued, you don't feel like the work you're doing matters, you don't really understand the meaning and purpose in your work, it's really easy and almost our natural inclination to gravitate towards hopelessness and kind of the negative. But the flip side of that, and I talked about it a little bit, is hope and hopelessness can coexist. And that's one of the things that I really like about hope is you can say, okay, this over here really sucks and it's hard, but what's one thing that I can do right now to move away from this? And then what's one more thing that I can do right now to move away from this? It doesn't have to be some big panacea of everything sucks and then tomorrow it's not going to. The biggest transformations in the world, pick your favorite one, none of them happened overnight. Not a single one of them. It happened by many people choosing the next step and the next step, and that's how we made change.
Hi. I've heard the word power come up a couple of times now, and you also talked about influence. Can you talk about more about the relationship between what you're calling hope and power and really getting things done?
Well, look, there's always going to be people in our lives, in our communities, in our workplaces that have more power than we do. That's just the way that the world works. But I think for me the connection is if you are a person that has power over people, you are a leader in an organization, a community of any type, understanding that by nature, the fact that you have more power than others makes it even more urgent that you come from that you are a person that cultivates the skill of hope in others. The way I would say, like from an organizational perspective, when I talk to leaders is, you have this incredible transformation strategy that you just spent $300 million with Deloitte consulting on. It's fantastic. It is the best transformational strategy in the world. What have you done to bring your people along on this transformation strategy? Are you just pushing it down and telling them this is the way that it is? Because they've been through a million transformation strategies, and they hear there's another strategy coming down, and everybody rolls their eyes because we haven't gotten them on board. We haven't shown them, okay, this is your role, this is your agency, this is why you matter to this transformation, and oh, by the way, this is actually how it's going to make your life better. Hope is about believing that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And if I'm doing something from a position of power and you don't believe that what I'm doing is going to make your tomorrow better than today, good luck. So that's what I would say the connection is.
One second.
I can speak now. What are the well-being practices? What are the well-being practices that you use to encourage that hope?
So I think well-being and hope are, I mean, it's almost a cycle, right? It's hard to, in many cases, cultivate hope on an ongoing basis if you are coming from a place of being chronically unwell or depleted or burnout. That's not always true. I mean, when you're depleted and burnt out, finding hope will help you recover and get better. So I do think, I mean, ultimately you want to cultivate hope and become a high hope individual. In order to do that, you have to be well. So, I mean, practices, look, there's a gazillion well-being practices, right? Making sure you get good sleep, movement it doesn't have to be some hardcore exercise, getting movement, getting sunshine, social interaction. Hope, the great thing about hope, kind of like gratitude and some of these other things, hope grows in community. So when you spend time with other people, that's a great place for hope to grow. And that's why it's so important in our organizations and in our workplaces, is because for most of us, we spend most of our waking hours with our colleagues, with fellow students, people in our community. And if we're not in a place where we are cultivating hope and optimism, then it becomes really hard, or you just stop wanting to spend time with those people. But I think social health and social well-being is really being challenged right now. So we have to be very intentional about that. Obviously, eating good and decent food most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, is important. So kind of your traditional wellness practices, if you will, but then also things like setting boundaries, right? Like disconnecting from your devices, doing things that are your hobbies, that light you up. All of those things put you in a place of being able to both experience hope for yourself and cultivate it for others.
Well, I hope you all have.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That I would always think, and I would also include what's still possible even now.
Absolutely.
Time alone.
Yeah.
I think it was Socrates that say, an unexamined life is not a life worth living.
Yeah.
So that time alone is huge.
Yeah, well, I think to cultivate hope, you have to have self-awareness. Like, you have to be able to say, this is where I am. Yeah.
Well, Jen, I personally want to thank you for your vision, for the book. I know for me personally, it's been very transformational, and I hope you all have really gotten a lot out of this morning. I mean, I just think it's gold, this perspective, and you're absolutely right. The time is now to really look at things a little bit differently, and thank you, Nathan, for your leadership of the center and bringing conversations like this to the room, and thank you all for your questions. So I know we've got a book signing out front,
We've got a
reception.
and
Yep.
hang around and have a chance to maybe chat with Jen and with each other.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for
Thank you
coming.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you.